Hello, welcome to video number 2. What we did on Wednesday night for students who were able to make it into the class, I wanted to provide a brief opportunity to go through the peer reviewing process with some of their colleagues, and then also just use that as an opportunity to talk a little bit about what peer review might look like, what evaluation and assessment might look like when it comes to writing, such as our research paper for the unsolved mystery. And so I have a brief little slideshow here and then a couple of rubrics that I'm just going to share with you. And so this was information that I presented to the students in class prior to allowing them the opportunity to read other people's papers and comment upon them. And so the most common form of scoring that I've seen in the middle school, high school level English classroom involves the 6 traits of writing. And sometimes, depending upon the text that you use, there might be a 7th trait. Sometimes that 7th trait is just, okay, once students have gone through the writing process, now we need to publish it in some form, whether that's a poster, or a brochure, or an actual book, or what that is, or we publish it online. But I'm just going to kind of keep it simple and sweet today with the 6 traits of writing. And so the first question is, what are these 6 traits? And so those are listed here. We have ideas, student ideas in the writing, organization of the writing, the voice in the writing, word choice in the writing, sentence fluency, and conventions. And so depending upon the focus of your particular unit, your particular writing assignment, some of these might be weighed more heavily than others. And so if you're focused on the research, then the ideas might be more important. If you're doing something that's more narrative in nature, voice and word choice might be more important. When you think about something like conventions, while those are important, punctuation, grammar, capitalization, spelling, certainly important, the question arises if a student is making the same mistake, they're not using an apostrophe for a word, or they're not capitalizing the same proper noun. How much do you want that single error to impact a student's overall grade? And so these are the main traits, but it becomes your responsibility then to figure out how you might weigh those depending upon the circumstances of your assignment. And most commonly when we think about holistic scoring, or we're going to score on an analytic rubric, give a student an overall score, 3 is kind of our proficiency level. That's where we want students to be. 4 would be above where we want them to be, and then there's kind of a line there. And 2 would be the progressing, in that students are showing a lot of signs of quality work, but they're not quite there yet. And beginning would be like they have quite a bit of work to do in order to meet proficiency. So this is a slideshow that I would share with my students in the middle school when we were going through a narrative writing unit. And so one of the topics that I would give would be for them to describe their favorite meal. And so when we talk about word choice, when we talk about voice, it might look a little bit different than it would for a research paper, like the unsolved mystery paper that you're writing right now. And I just wanted to give you some context because, like I said in the last video, if I'm providing direct instruction for students, but I'm not explicitly telling them what they're supposed to be doing while I'm providing that information in the form of notes or graphic organizers or whatever, then I can't assume that they're going to know how or be able to do it. Same way with peer review. We've been through English programs. We probably have friends or colleagues or spouses that might check over emails or papers that are of high importance to us before we send them. Your middle school and high school students, that's not the case. And so we need to intentionally teach them how to go about peer review and help them to recognize that there are really 2 different ways that peer review helps. First, it helps whoever owns the paper because they're getting feedback upon that document. But it also helps the person who is reviewing because you're able to see then multiple examples of what other people's papers look like. You become kind of zeroed in, narrowed, and focused on your own paper that sometimes you're not able to see issues with it that are immediately obvious to somebody else's eyes. And so as we go through this, then I would have students work through the rubrics, and as they're reading their partner's paper, I'm posing these questions to them about each of the traits. So for ideas, do you have questions about the writing? Are there holes in the writing? Are there things that confuse you? And then because it's middle school or early high school, do they stay on topic? Like, what was the prompt they were supposed to be writing to, and do you feel that they actually stuck to that, or did they wander around a little bit? When it comes to organization, I always use the metaphor of organizing your closet, organizing your locker, organizing, your backpack or whatever, and trying to have these clearly defined sections of your writing. Do they have an introduction? Does it hook the reader? Do they have a conclusion? Is it evident that that's the conclusion of their paper? And then I have them say, hey, just underline the hook. Avoid weak transitions like first, second, third, but transitions are important in writing. Could you maybe circle those transitions? Are details placed in the right or proper order? Is there a beginning and a middle and an end? And can you feel it? Can you recognize it? As far as voice goes, this is the trait that's going to look very different for expository, informational, research writing, because you almost are training students to kill their personal voice. But in narrative writing or poetry or something like that, you're encouraging them to explore creating their own voice. So this is the slide that might look different for you with your research paper, but does this essay sound like everyone else's, or does the writer's voice come through? Do they use figurative language? Is there humor or emotion in the essay? And then just make a couple of comments about good voice or lack of voice. When it comes to word choice, each one of these traits, we would have had like a lesson or two prior about what it means to be a vivid verb, and we'd create a list of vivid verbs that you could use in your writing, and tired words, we'd put those, and we'd put a big X through them and those types of things. And so I would just ask students to note, where are those really vivid verbs that kind of jump off the page at you as you're reading your partner's paper? And then where are those words that are kind of tired, like, dull, awesome? They say it's awesome rather than showing us that it's awesome, through other more creative language. We want to note that as we're peer reviewing. Sentence fluency. Is the reader able to easily read your text? Are sentences clear? Are they the same length, or do they vary? Are you trying to use different forms and structures of sentences? I say 5 to 7 sentences per paragraph. One of the reasons I've said that is because I found students sometimes underperform, and so then even if they give me 4, well, that could still be a legitimate paragraph. And then 5 paragraphs per essay. When it comes to conventions, I asked them to note spelling errors, note punctuation, note the end punctuation as well, and proper nouns. And so that's just a brief PowerPoint that you could use, or you could maybe change it to fit the needs of your students. But it was really helpful the first time we kind of went through the peer review process, first couple of times. And we even had some teachers who had collected previous students' essays from classes beforehand. And I'd have students practice, and we'd go through it together, grading other students' work, not within the class, so that we can actually practice how we give appropriate feedback to other students. So what I want to pull up now are just a couple of the rubrics that you're going to be able to find on over on the handout side. This is the first one, and this is again assuming that we've got kind of a 4-point grading scale. Where does the paper that you're reading land for each of the 6 traits? And then a brief description of what constitutes each of those traits. Again, I haven't used this for a while. This was back in my middle school days, but I thought I would just share it with you to kind of see, so that you were able to see one way that this is sort of displayed. The second one, the rubric number 2, I like a little bit better. And because it's an analytic rubric and allows me to just highlight or circle where students scored, gives us a spot for the total score, gives us an opportunity to give them some actual textual feedback. And the other thing that I like about this is just as an example of how it weighs. It condenses the categories, so it puts ideas and contents together, it puts voice and word choice together, it puts sentence fluency and conventions together. And most of those tend to overlap a little bit. But it weighs this first category significantly more. So you see that ideas and content are worth 35%, where sentence fluency and conventions down here, it weighs only 20% of the student's overall grade. And so we still have the designation of you are beginning, you are progressing, you are proficient, you are above proficient in terms of these numbers. But when it comes to the actual student score, you can see that a 4 in ideas and content is worth 7 points. For organization, a 4 would be worth 5. And then for voice, word choice, and sentence fluency and conventions, a 4 is only going to net you 4 points. And so that's how, as an English teacher, I was able to sort of weigh these categories rather than creating some mathematical equation in the grade book. It was just easier to do this way. And so again, unfortunately, you were not able to actually go through the peer review process, but I did just want to share this video with you to give you an idea of how this might look or should look in your classroom as well. So I'll be back with one more video over a grammar lesson here later today, and then that should about do it until next week.